All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday. I am coming to you in the middle of the day on a Monday with the Heart and Hustle review, episode 2. I thought I had the photo, but I do not. So I will just pull that up in just a second. I really thought I had the Heart and Hustle promo photo already up, but I don't. So I'm going to pull that up now. But in the meantime, I think I told you guys this is now like one of my favorite new shows that OWN has put out. I really like the show a lot. I think that it does a great job of really capturing women's not necessarily struggles, but just the friendship and how sometimes there can be issues when there are women that are married, there are women that are not married. It can be sometimes difficult when you're transitioning through different stages and someone else at a different point. But I ultimately believe that friendship can still be attained, with women, regardless of where you are in life, because trust me, those tides can change. And sometimes you need your sister, right? And most importantly, like the journey is supposed to be something that friendship is not supposed to be something that is contingent upon where you are. It is supposed to be something that is just, resolute and something you can fall back on and ask for help, regardless of where you are. But there is often a disconnect in the priorities, I would say, sometimes between single women and married women. I know there are a lot of single women that I've heard, being on both sides of the coin at various points in my life. You hear someone say, well, why is she always talking about, even women that have children, like she's always talking about her kids. I don't have kids. I don't want to hear about that. Or she's always talking about her husband, or she can't go anywhere unless she asks her husband. Or there's so many there's a lot of differences between single women and married women. So I think this show allows us to kind of see all of those. Before I get into this conversation, if you're not a member here, if you're not a part of the XO family, make sure that you do go ahead, as the bell button is suggesting there, and like and subscribe. This is the show here that we are talking about. Here are the young ladies from the cast of Heart and Hustle Houston. And they're all very beautiful, all very accomplished in their own right, but all very, very, very different personalities, extremely different personalities. This week, I actually enjoyed this Saturday's episode because it highlighted the Houston rodeo, right? And this year, I went to the rodeo with a couple of my friends, and we had a really good time. And so kind of seeing that shown on the screen was cool, seeing some of the things that some of the events that we attended shown, and just the atmosphere there. If you've never been to the Houston rodeo, you definitely should put that on your bucket list. If you are a true, if you really enjoy like the whole country lifestyle. I know a lot of people are being introduced to it now because of Beyonce and Cowboy Carter. But the reality is there's been a large group of African Americans that were involved in the Western cowboy lifestyle. That is not new. Beyonce did not invent that. But she's bringing light and to it. That's cool. And I think that a lot of people are now just it's fashionable. It's fun. The Houston rodeo is, it is a cultural thing. It's not just Black. This is diverse, but there are a lot of events that belong to us, if you're going for something like that. But so my girlfriends and I, we made a trip of it. I hope we get a chance to do it again next year in 2026. But we went this year. We got us an Airbnb and we just really had a good time. So seeing the ladies enjoy that was really cool. But there were a lot of really deep conversations again on this series. If you guys remember last week, I asked the question if it was appropriate to speak on your friend's husband, the looks of your friend's husband. And most of us said no. Most of us said that that Khloe was way out of line with that. And that was not something that should be, tolerated or accepted in friendships. So of course we saw that being addressed in the second episode. Elena, whose husband was the one being addressed, she brought it up to Khloe. Here's Khloe right here, that she did not appreciate her saying that her husband wasn't fine. It almost sounded like a really like petty conversation. There's Elena right there, both very beautiful women. It just sounded kind of petty, like, you said my husband wasn't fine. My husband is fine. Okay, girl. If you think, I don't think it's about is he fine or not. I think it's just the fact of like, why would you say that? Hey, Tisha, thanks for joining in the middle of the day. I'm definitely going to have this up for later, but I wanted to usually do these Heart and Hustle reviews on Sunday, but because I had a lot going on yesterday, I didn't get a chance to do it. So I thought I would come here in the middle of the day, middle of my work day, and kind of talk to the channel about Heart and Hustle. So as I was saying, Elena had an opportunity to confront Khloe about what she said, her comments about her husband. What I did appreciate about the way Elena handled it is that she didn't do it in front of the group. You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the things with reality TV. We usually see women confront other women in a group setting, which whenever you confront anybody, it could be, you know, a man, a woman, a child, in front of an audience, you're not going to get that person's true response. You're going to get their response in front of a crowd, which could be embarrassment, which may make them more defensive. Usually they're going to step up and be a little bit more disagreeable because there's a crowd, right? And so they don't like to, no one wants to be chastised in front of others. And so I think the fact that Elena had the class to pull Khloe to the side and not do it in front of the group of ladies, and you know, make sure that it was personal. I give her credit for that. I thought that was very classy. Khloe did not really receive what Elena was saying, but I think Khloe's personality is just one that is not, she's not really a sensitive person. She's not really an empathetic person. And so, but she's also very honest. And I think even though I know that those qualities can often rub people the wrong way, I do think sometimes you need those voices that are just you know, uncensored and are going to be honest with you, because sometimes some of your other friends, like myself, I'm always the diplomatic one, the one that's going to say things in a nice, polished way, because that's just who I am. It's not me being fake. That's just who I am. I've always been that way. I'm also very empathetic. So I'm also very much trying to figure out how to say things in a way to make the other person not feel, you know, defensive. I'm always trying to look for ways to cater to other people's feelings, which sometimes I can admit that gets me into trouble, because a lot of times I don't say my honest feelings because I'm so busy trying to not hurt someone else's feelings, right? So somehow you need those uncensored friends. It's just like, girl, this is what it is, right? I definitely need those around me, and thankfully I have them. I have quite a few of them to offset my diplomacy. There's some rawness there, but at the end of the day, everyone's different, personality is different, and so you have to understand that conversation, they ended it kind of like we agree to disagree. But I did want to say it's interesting because there's a different type of context. The word fine can be used in different ways. So when Khloe said, and I don't know why this picture of Khloe is kind of blurry, but you guys get the drift. She's very pretty. They both have these really dope shortcuts. But Khloe was like, I'm thinking of fine as defined like muscled up, right? And a lot of people, when that's like a Southern cultural thing. Like, I remember growing up in Oklahoma, if someone was considered fine, that just meant that they were just all over. The whole picture was great, right? Well, when I moved to Atlanta, I started hearing people say, well, fine just meant they had a nice body. So a girl or a guy could be fine, like from the neck down, and not necessarily, yes, I know it's petty. Okay. I know it's petty, and I know I'm splitting hairs, but I'm just saying, giving Khloe the benefit of the doubt that she was not saying that he was unattractive. She was just saying he wasn't all muscled up. Not that she should have been saying that either, but she was. But this is the thing too. Regardless, you know, Elena didn't appreciate that being said about her husband. So I think that we did get a chance to see a little bit more of Khloe this episode as well. We saw her go to the grave site with her children, her two twin daughters. Well, not twin daughters, two daughters, and also some of her family members to memorialize her husband who passed away not very long ago. And she shared how he passed. He passed from a heart attack, and his family was there. Their children were there. I don't believe her oldest son was by her husband because he's like in his early 20s, and the girls are much younger. And she said they were in a relationship for 7 years. So that leads me to believe that her oldest son was not necessarily by the love of her life. She said that he passed away from a massive heart attack, which is very sudden, right? And so we saw some clips. She shared with the audience some clips of the two of them, and ironically, he was muscled up. So she's very clear about that's what her type is. But it just again allows me as a viewer to give Khloe even more grace, because some of her uncensored, raw, in your face commentary is based on the fact that she's still grieving, right? Even the way she shows up and having very little just empathy or grace for others, I think is, literally because she's struggling with still grieving the loss of her husband. And I do think, when you find your person, it's very difficult to do. It's a very difficult thing. Sometimes it's impossible. Some people never experience that type of love. Hey, Delphin, welcome. I decided to do this a little earlier today because I didn't get a chance to do my review on Heart and Hustle this weekend. So if you guys are just joining, like our good friend Delphin, this is the review for episode 2 of Heart and Hustle. Here are the ladies right here. 6 friends. I'm not going to say best friends because I don't think some of these girls, I don't get the vibe that they actually were that close before this show. And I'm also aware that there were a lot of production companies looking for groups of Black women to cast. I was very privy to that. Got some casting companies reaching out, looking for groups of women friends to cast. So I think this was one of those situations. I think there are a few of them that really did have connections, but for the most part, I think this is a cast that's been kind of brought together because they realized that there was a demand for this type of show. That being said, seeing Khloe's, the little bit that she shared about her her husband that passed away. First of all, you got to understand, like I said, grief. When you have unexpected death, that's very difficult to get over. I think death is difficult to get over, period. But when someone passes away and you had one day you guys are just talking and laughing and loving, and the next day they're gone, that is, it's mind blowing. It takes a while for you to make peace and come to terms with what's happening, right? So I can understand why she's still in a state of grief. She's still in a state of mourning. And I definitely have empathy for her with that. Now, that does not give her a right to, go off on her friends. And I definitely feel like her attitude is one that is not, it's going to receive a lot of criticism, and she's probably not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But I think if she can just be a bit more vulnerable about what she's going through, then some of the other ladies may have a little bit more empathy for her, right? Also interesting that, she's dating younger men, and I think Khloe is just acting out because she's hurt and she lost her forever. And this is her way of lashing out. We all have different ways of dealing with grief. But I honestly believe, and this is exactly why I always tell, this channel, when you guys leave here, try to love on the people that love you. Try to make sure that you don't go a long period of time being angry at your family that you love, or, letting too many sunsets happen on your anger or your distance, because life is not promised and we really don't know how long we have with anyone, be it your parent, your child, your significant other, your friend. So try to tell people as often as you can that you love and appreciate their presence in your life. Because you can see the pain on her face, the pain on his family's face at the gravesite. They are mourning this man's 50th, it would have been his 50th birthday. And that's such a young age to be gone. So that means he passed in his 40s, 48, 49 years old, between 47 and 48 years old. So we're just not promised. I know we feel like we are, but we're not. And so whenever I hear of an example like that, it just reminds me not to let the sun go down on my anger for people that I love, because it's just, you would have amazing regrets. Can you imagine having an argument with someone and then the next call that you get is that they're not here anymore? So anyway, keeping that in mind is allowing me to give Khloe some grace, because like I said, how she shows up is not the way that I personally would want a friend to show up, right? She seems very just like she has no empathy for Elena, who is going through a difficult time in her marriage. Even her telling Elena, well, if you think he's fine, then go give him some. Now, it could be that she said that because she realizes how precious life is after losing her husband. But she's totally throwing out the idea that Elena and her husband, Josh, are really going through a difficult time, and telling her just to give him some is not going to fix it. Or maybe it will. Sometimes men seem like maybe that will fix it. But no, seriously, there's a lot more to it than just that. But again, kudos to Elena for handling it like a lady. I want to talk a little bit about the conversation that Elena and Josh had when the show opened. I agree, Delphin. Khloe does throw a lot of shade, and that was actually my question of the day. I'll go ahead and say that now, and we can come back to it. Question of the day is calling someone a BBW an insult, or is that a compliment? Someone who has struggled with their weight for most of their life, I do not see that as a compliment. So when Khloe says that Latoya should not be single because she's a BBW and a cute one, she threw it in because I was like, is she saying BBW like she's a big, beautiful woman? Or is she just saying she's a big, like, I don't know, but she said she's a BBW and a cute one at that. So it feels like when people say, oh, she's pretty to be brown skin or dark skin, or it's wrapped in a little bit of shade. And I don't like that. I personally would not have taken that as a compliment. I can't speak for Latoya, but I also think that she has to realize that being on this show with other women that are not necessarily BBWs, that's not easy. So this is Latoya, who Khloe called a BBW. If you guys did not see the show, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the instance where they were at the rodeo. They went to the Houston rodeo, and this reporter came up and interacted with Latoya. And I told you guys, I've actually had the pleasure of working with her in the past. She's a publicist as well. And so as publicists, you're going to interact with a lot of people. I could totally relate to that scene with her not recognizing the lady. That happens to me all the time because my job is to talk to people all the time. And a lot of times I'm not good with names. I may not even remember. My intent is good. I had that happen to me this weekend. I saw someone and they were like, you don't know who I am? And I was like, hey, girl. And I try to play it off. I've gotten pretty good at playing it off. But really, when your job is just to constantly be interacting with people on behalf of other people, it can be hard. I don't know, maybe I have a menopause brain or something, but I just have a really hard time keeping up with names and things like that. But this reporter that Latoya has worked with before comes up to her, gives her a hug, and the ladies really want her to find a relationship. She said that she wants to find love. And so Khloe made this statement during her confessional that, Latoya should not be single. Basically, she feels like, she should have made a move on this guy. And she said she's a BBW. So question, you can let me know in the chat. And if you guys are watching the replay, please let me know. Is calling a woman a BBW a compliment, or do you see that as an insult? Again, here's the full picture. You see Khloe is in the dead center. Latoya, who she was referring to, was in this orange. Back on the, I guess on you guys' screen, it'll probably be the left-hand side, in this orange dress. I don't know. I did not take it as a compliment. But I feel like she meant this one. I don't know. I ain't like it. I ain't like it. I ain't like it. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments, and I'm gonna put this on my social page. Is calling a woman a BBW a compliment, or is that an insult, or is it something that you just should not refer to? Now, I think if someone calls themselves a BBW, I've watched a few times that 1,000-Pound Roommates that are on I think it's on WeTV, and either it may be TLC. I don't know. I'm not talking about that show now. But those young ladies who are very pretty and, they're on the show, they're very, unashamed of their weight and, living in it and being very open, honest, and authentic. And they will call themselves BBWs. So that's one thing. I think if someone calls themselves a BBW, that's their prerogative. But it didn't feel good for me hearing another woman call another woman a BBW and say she was cute. So what is you talking about, sis? You saying that she's big, but she's cute to be big? Like, I didn't like it. But like I said, I think Khloe is going to constantly be the one on the show that puts her foot in her mouth, and either the other girls like it or not. Before I go back to Elena and her husband, let me sit right here with Latoya and Khloe, because that conversation that the two of them had actually is going to make this other problem that Elena and Khloe tried to fix come back alive. Because if you guys remember last week when Latoya was talking to Elena about the fact that Khloe made that statement, Elena said she can't pull the same caliber of men that I can. I don't know why we ladies, don't do that. Don't do that. First of all, unless you're a man, you don't know who can pull who, right? You just don't. To say that's rooted in egotistical avoidance. So it's like I want to make myself feel good about the fact that I'm in a bad place in my marriage and that this woman said my husband wasn't fine. So I don't feel like she should have said that. I don't feel like that was necessary, but I also understand that her feelings were hurt. So Elena was speaking from a hurt place of someone saying, girl, your husband ain't fine. So you're going to go back and say, well, you can never pull the caliber of men that I pull. I don't know. Y'all, both of y'all pretty. I mean, yeah. Men are probably like both of y'all. But Latoya went back and carried the bone, and she didn't carry it correctly. So she comes to the rodeo, and when she and Khloe go to the bar to get a drink, she says to Khloe, well, Khloe brings up the fact that Elena confronted her, and she said she was offended at the fact that Elena brought it up. She thought it was ridiculous. And then Latoya planted that seed. She said, well, she said you could never get a man like Josh. That is not necessarily what she said. What she said is that she couldn't pull the same caliber of men. But of course, hearing it either way was going to piss Khloe off, right? And so now it's the sores, the bandage has been ripped off, and they're going to constantly probably be at odds, because whenever you make a statement like that, can't really go back from that, especially when you didn't say it to the person's face. So yeah, I thought that was weird. Delphin says, I have a friend who imitates how I used to walk in the room when I was larger. See, I didn't like that. I would not like that. But everybody's different. And I think you have to know your friends. And so maybe Khloe is always that in your face person, and maybe the other girls are okay with that. I don't know. But in any case, I don't like it, and I wouldn't like my friend imitating the way I walk when I walk in the room. I would not be laughing. But that's just me. That's just me. That could be a sore spot for me. But I just I wouldn't like it. Anyway, if you are just tuning in, this is the review for episode 2 of Heart and Hustle. I'm doing this a little bit later. We're doing it on Monday instead of Sunday because I had a very busy Sunday and didn't get a chance to do it. But I always love jumping on during the day because there's some of you from the EXO chats late at night that are able to jump on, and then I get a chance to meet some new people as well. So moving back to the conversation that Elena and her husband Josh had, that was like the first thing that we saw when the episode opened, was the two of them sitting down and having a conversation about where they are. It was interesting to see Elena take him to her new location, and she seems extremely it seems to be extremely important to her to create her own independent identity separate from her husband. And I can understand that. Specifically, they've been married since high school, because when you're married, it's easy to, especially for a long time, it's easy for people to start looking at you as a not an individual, but a couple, right? One as a couple, which is not wrong because that's really what you're supposed to be. But I don't think that it's always a healthy thing, specifically when you're younger. When you're younger, you're not really sure who you are. So you're learning who you are, and learning that in addition to being meshed with someone else could be frustrating. They are at a point in their life where I think she wants to have her own identity. He probably wants to have his as well. I don't think that men take on women's identities as much. I think 9 times out of 10 in relationships, the woman is the one that kind of absorbs him, because that's what we are. We're nurturers, and we are, God created us like that. We want to make our husbands happy. We want to, help them amplify whatever they want to do. But often, because I think it's in a man's nature to be the head, he's often not realizing how much is being taken away from the woman's personality. So I understand why Elena wants to do that. I think she also wants him to be proud of her and what she's doing, because you can tell that she's excited to show him what she's doing on her own. I did think it was interesting that we got a chance to see, for those of you that watch this channel, we talked about the other show that was in Houston and earlier this year on OWN. And I think that is coming back as well. But we got a chance to see one of the husbands from that show, that's a photographer, was on the show. His name is Chris. And he actually, I cannot remember the name of that. Actually, I can't even remember the name of his wife right now. But yeah, he was on there. So it just shows that it's a really tight knit community, as I'm not surprised to see. Also, I think that was Family Empire, that show. That's interesting because they have 2 shows in Houston that are very similar. That show is specifically about family. So these women that are married are all cousins and sisters. This show, they're friends, but we did see an overlap of cast. So the guy that was taking pictures of Munira and her husband and their children was also on Family Empire. Anyway, back to Elena and Josh. It was interesting seeing that conversation. I do believe, my mother used to always tell me that if you're married and you have a person that is willing to work on the relationship, that's really all you need, right? Because as long as a person is willing to work on themselves and you're willing to work on yourself, that's all you can ask for, because no one's perfect, right? So Josh seems very willing to work. What I like about the conversation is that he took ownership for his problems. He said that he came into the marriage not healed. One of the biggest takeaways I think that we all should kind of realize with this couple is things can be buried and for a long time and can still be unhealed, right? A lot of times we can feel like we're healed just because so much time has gone by. Elena and Josh have been married over 15 years. She said during the engagement, there was infidelity, and she still has not healed from that. So I know most men would be like, yeah, you should have been over that. You should have been over that. Why did you marry me if you still weren't over the infidelity? Well, the reality is just because someone cheats on you does not mean you stop loving them. I know we as women wish we could. I'm sure there are men that have been cheated on that wish they could turn their heart off as well. But just because someone cheats on you, just because someone betrays your trust, it doesn't make you stop loving them. So a lot of times people stay in relationships because they aren't ready to let that person go because they love them, right? And they want it to work. But that doesn't negate the fact that person betrayed you and you're hurt. And so I think we have to understand as a community, like just because someone forgives you does not mean that they're over the hurt. And so we're seeing that there's a lot of pain that has been tucked away, and anything that's hidden eventually comes out. Nothing what goes on in the dark comes out in the light. You guys know that. So the fact that she was not able to hold to let that go, and now we're seeing it come out 15 years later is just telling of the fact that, you know, a lot of women are dealing with that. A lot of people are dealing with it. But I appreciate the fact that he said that he needs to go to therapy by himself first and then couples counseling. And I wonder that, like, do you guys think that married people should have individual therapy before they do couples therapy? That's an interesting concept because ideally, you know, if you're married, you should want to find ways to fix yourself for your partner. But I do think a lot of us have trauma that goes back so far, like way before that person was there. So I understand Josh saying that maybe he needed to go to counseling first to find himself and before he would come together with Elena. What do you guys think about that? I appreciated that, but I also think that if you want to be in a marriage, it's going to take work and it's going to take intention to stay together. And so doing your own counseling could be good, but I think at the same time, it would be good to do counseling together. So maybe you do counseling alone and counseling together, as opposed to I'm going to do it by myself. And then when I'm done, because ideally you'll never really be done with therapy. Like therapy is something that is a way to maintain a healthy mental health, right? It's not like you ever go and get done with it. It's something that needs to be ongoing. Trust me. Ask me how I know. In the words of one of my mentors, a young man said, ask me how I know. Therapy is something that I think we have to all go through consistently. You know, maybe not as much. There could be times that you need more. Like I remember certain times in my life, certain therapists were good for me, right? I remember my first therapist was this white man that I didn't relate to at all, like at all. But that was good for me because I needed somebody that was totally objective. And the things that he was saying, I knew were just truth. It wasn't based in understanding me. It wasn't based in knowing my culture, my history. It was just, this is what it is. This doesn't make sense, right? I remember one of the things that I can share an example with you guys. I was concerned, you know, and coming like, you know, just being in a place where there's a lot of people comparing you to other people. And he was like, you know, for the most part, most people are like in the middle. You know, there are some outliers that are like extremely attractive. And then there are some people that are extremely unattractive. But most people are just kind of like, they're just people in the middle. No, you know, no one's not, most people are not walking around looking like Beyonce all day, every day, right? I'm just using her as an example. And most men are not walking around, you know, looking like Mr. Denzel Washington, like Devil in a Blue Dress. That's not happening. Most people are just people, and it's very average, right? And I was coming from this perspective of like, oh my God, if I don't show up like this, you know, maybe I'm not going to be good enough. And it's like, that's not even realistic, you know? And so the fact that someone who doesn't know me, who doesn't have anything to do with me, would say that that was good. But then later in my life, when I went back to therapy, then I needed someone that I could relate to. I needed someone that did understand my issues and things like that. And so I ended up going with a Black woman that's just a little bit older than me, just a few years older than me, so that I could get a little of that wisdom that she has. But it did help me to also be in the same experience. My therapist now is a Black woman. You know, she's about 13 or 14 years older than I am, which I like because, again, I like to pull that wisdom. But I also know she understands what I'm going through. So circling that back to Josh and Elena, I think that it's good to do therapy on your own. But if you're in a marriage, I do think that you have to do it together because, again, according to the Bible, if you believe in the Bible, which I do, it says, man should leave his father and mother, woman should leave, and they should cleave to one another, and the two should become one flesh. So that means that anything that you're doing, you should be conscientiously and strategically growing together, and doing counseling on your own, going and finding yourself. It can be very much, it can very much be separating the from the marriage. So that's just my 2 cents. You guys can let me know in the chat, and if you're watching this on the replay, please let me know also what you think. But I love the fact that he was willing to go to therapy. I like the fact that he's admitting that a lot of the issues that they had were his. And I think a lot of times people don't realize cheating, it comes from some type of illness or some type of symptom, feeling less than, insecurity. People do things for reasons. People don't just do things for no reason. And so hopefully they'll be able to work that out. I also wonder if sleeping in different beds in different rooms is a good idea. Let me know what you guys think about that, because she said she moved out of their marital bedroom 2 months ago. And I understand that, but I also wonder if that puts a bigger gap, between you. Sometimes you need a break just to kind of get yourself together. And they've been married so long, they probably have a great foundation. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Do you think that if you sleep in separate bedrooms and you disconnect there, that intimacy and just that closeness, do you think that can be keeping you guys from being able to get back together in a healthy way? Interested to hear what you guys think about that. I'm not really sure. I know that sometimes you need a break. And if you're being hurt, if when you're in the room with your partner, you feel rejected or you feel really rejection is the biggest reason, then I understand leaving. But I do think it's, in a marriage, the best thing to do is to try to work on things together, because you want that to be the pattern for the marriage. Moving on to another marriage, we got a chance to see a little bit more from Munira and her family. There she is right there. Munira is mixed race. Her mother is from India and her father is African American. So we got a chance to see her having the conversations with her mother, her doing content creation. Munira is the one that was an electrical engineer, very successful, and then decided, over the last few years that she's just going to focus totally on content. I'm not gonna lie, watching her shoot the content made me tired. I could never, that's not what I could do. I could talk to you guys here on YouTube, and I definitely love the collaboration as Scorpio mode I have, and definitely different people on. However, I can't imagine having little kids and wanting them to dress up and be seen. That would drive me nuts. But she loves it. You can tell that the family is very happy doing it. The kids like the attention. The husband seems to be going along with it. And he may enjoy it as well. I can't imagine him enjoying it as much as she does, right? But he seems to be on board with them doing family content. What I thought was interesting is that she, her marriage seems to be one of the most, solid ones. Her and the other young lady, where is she at? Right here. I think that they seem to have the most solid marriages, but she was saying even though they've been married 11 years, she wanted them to be spending more time together. Also, her mother lives with them, which is interesting. I do know from having some friends in the industry that are of an Indian American background that parents coming to live with them is very natural, right? It's almost a part of the culture. You take care of your parents, you live with them, they live with you. So she's saying, hey, Tamika, welcome on a Monday afternoon. She was saying that she wants her husband and her mother to be closer. And so she said, I want to go on a date with my husband, but I want to take my mom on a date too. that's kind of weird. I do understand her wanting her husband to talk to her mom more, but I don't know about them going on a date together, all together. Like, I don't know. I don't know. That sounded a little strange to me, but I understand her wanting that. She wants a cohesive family. I also heard her when she mentioned that, her mom and dad split when she was very young. They got divorced, and she feels like she's still in the middle. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. The woman in her late 30s would still feel like she's in the middle of her mother and father's divorce that happened when she was a small child. But I think, again, it just goes to prove that time doesn't always heal things. It puts them under a rug, but they always pop back up again. And so, her husband asked about her talking to her father, and she said, I've talked to him, but she feels guilty sometimes for talking to him because of the relationship with her mom, because her mom doesn't feel good about that. Like, that's heartbreaking, and that's so many families are dealing with that now. So I love the fact that they address that. It'd be interesting to see if we can ever understand what the issues are with her mom and her husband. But her mom said something today that was, something Saturday that was very pivotal to me. She said, he's trying to change. He doesn't understand that I'm from India and my culture is different. And I think that's huge, because you got to realize that other cultures have a lot more pride in the way they raise their children, the way they operate. I think there's a deeper sense of reverence and respect for tradition, right? So for her mom, she's saying that she thinks everything is fine, and she feels like he doesn't understand the Indian culture, and he may not, because he's not Indian. But I thought that was very telling, and her mom being very honest about the fact that she didn't need more from him. The daughter's trying to make something that the mother doesn't even care about. I definitely, yes, thank you, Jala. I am enjoying the show as well, but I would love to hear more from her mom, especially because if a person has problems with their in-laws and the in-laws live with them, that's got to be a lot. So I would love to hear why the mother and the husband are clashing. That would be really interesting to hear. So I look forward to us learning more and digging more into their story. Right now, Munira just seems to have the perfect life, and we know that there's no such thing. So we're going to probably be seeing more of what that looks like over the upcoming episodes. So let's move on to our girl. Let's see here. Pull up my pictures. Oh, no. There we go. All right. So the girls, this is that Ro? That's Ro, right? Yes, that's Ro. So Ro had a conversation with her daughter, and I believe that she's also in her early 30s. We saw her have a conversation with her daughter playing basketball, which I thought was really cute. And she was basically telling her daughter that she was unhappy at work. They're having a conversation like friends. Like, she didn't necessarily seem like her daughter. She seemed like a younger sibling or even friend that she was talking to. I think that could put a little pressure on the daughter, because she was like, I'm just praying for us to get to a better place. And, with this job, I got to do something different. It's like, I'm praying too. I know how that feels, because I was a single mom with my kids when my daughter was like 12 when that happened. So we did talk a lot about praying and asking God to get us into a better situation. But I also feel like if I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't have shared as much with my children, because I just didn't want them to feel burdened, right? It was obvious to them that there was some trouble, happening. But sometimes I wish I had been able to hide a bit more of it from them, because children don't need to feel like it's their responsibility to fix their parents, And I felt like that before. I'm sure my daughter has felt like that, and my son. And I don't think that's right. I don't think you should put that burden on children because they don't know what to do with it. Even when they're grown. They're still your children, and they're still the dynamic of the mother or the father that should be the leader and the protector. And I think when the mother or father shows up as extremely vulnerable and not knowing what to do and needing help, that could make the child feel very unsafe. And I don't think that that's a good idea. But one thing I did find interesting is that Ro acknowledged, and there she is one more time. She acknowledged that she, early on in her life, she was not really looking for a career. I mean, a man. She definitely was focused on her career. She was married to her career, she said. And she didn't necessarily want children or a husband. And she ended up getting pregnant. She mentioned, having thoughts about terminating that pregnancy, but God, basically feeling like God told her to continue and with the pregnancy. And so she said her daughter's the best thing that ever happened to her. I can relate because my children are definitely the best things, in my life. And the best things that ever pulled me through some extremely dark places. But she also acknowledged that she doesn't think she's ever been in love. And I, again, give her kudos for being honest about that, because I think there's a lot of women that could relate to that. I think there's a lot of women that have, had men, they have had intimacy, but they've never truly, truly connected and loved someone, because I think we don't really understand as a people, like, what that means. So people see someone you're attracted to, you hang out with them, you want them to like you back. They do or they don't, they take you out. And then it's like, but eventually those looks are going to fade away. Eventually that charisma gets dull, right? And we start to be like, we look around. So I applaud her for acknowledging that she's never really been in love. She's probably been in she's probably been in infatuation, maybe even lust, but love is a very special thing. And I think a lot of people don't even understand what that means. To me, when you love someone, you prioritize them and you put them first and you want them to be happy, and they make being around them makes you happy, whether you're sitting courtside at a game or just sitting on the sofa in your socks, right? That person makes you happy. And I also think that if you love someone, that means you don't want them not to be in your life. Like you want to make sure that they feel appreciated in your life, right? So her saying that she's never had that was huge. And it also kind of explains that we mature in different ways at different times. And so she's been so focused on her career. And I know, because I can definitely relate to that. I also believe that sometimes those of us that are so related to our career, it's a good place to hide, because you don't want to deal with rejection. And your career is easy. If I put in, I'm going to get out. But in relationships, sometimes we can put everything in and still not get the response or the ending that we would have wanted. And so I just think kudos to Ro for being honest about that. And I hope that she would find a man that would be patient with her and allow her to feel it. But I think you don't need to be in love with a whole bunch of people. That's just hurtful. And really, you need to pray that God would send you the right one and that you can figure out how to make that work. So I don't know about the hot girl summer they were talking about, but I definitely think that Ro acknowledging that proves that she's very self-aware, right? Which is a good thing. And then number two, it allows her to now begin to start to make space for someone in that wants to be in that space with her. So I congratulate her on that acknowledgement, and then also the fact that she wants to really do things on her own, and she's not willing to sacrifice. If a man is not giving her what she needs, she's willing to move on. And I know that that's difficult, but I also know that it's worth it. Again, ask me how I know. Once I got over the fact that person was not committed to the marriage, then I was able to, okay, I can understand I'm not doing anything wrong. That's just not what they want. So I think if she's now open, all the men that she's dated before, they probably had no idea that she wasn't really open. Or maybe they did, because a lot of times men are perceptive and they just use you for what you're offering, right? So if you're offering some hot thighs in a bed, they're gonna definitely take you up on that offer. But if deep down you want more, then you have to say that, you know. So I'm interested in seeing Ro, because I also think that she's also very authentic. I get the feeling from Ro that she's very, very authentic. She's not fake. She's not the type that would be saying something for the TV sake, or saying something to the friends that's not true, because she's been very honest that she's, you know, she feels like she's been used by the guys that she was working with, and now she wants to focus on herself. And again, that's something that we all have a right to do. So kudos to Ro, and like I said, I look forward to seeing her kind of find herself as a woman that's not working all the time, as a woman that's not constantly catering to other people. I remember a mentor of mine said, Christal, do not ever let your clients' dreams supersede your children's dreams. And that's hard to do when you are, you know, working for people and they trust you and they put a lot of pressure on you. It's really difficult to say, no, I've got to focus on myself and I'm deserving of my own time. If you feel like I'm such a value to you, then I have to be that same type of value to myself. So kudos to her again. I think that she's definitely growing up, and you know, growing up can happen at many ages. It is not only for teenagers. It is for all of us. We are all growing. And I see her really, you know, kind of embarking on a journey of self-discovery as a woman. You know, I think that's going to be great for her. I love that for her. So yeah, that's about it for today. We didn't get a chance to see much with Labrina. She's the one that got the ladies together and invited everyone to the rodeo. But other than that, we didn't see much from her this episode. So Khloe, we saw her at the grave. We saw Elena and her husband talking. Those were the biggest themes of this week's show. And then also Munira here on the side, who we knew was not all the way black, but now we really know that she is, what did she say? Oh, well, she's Indian. Her mom is Indian. So she's definitely mixed race. And I think that plays into personality and everything. I think all of it is very important. So with that being said, I'm going to rate the second episode. I'm going to give it a 7.5 because it wasn't really it wasn't like the first episode, right? But I do appreciate, like I said, Elena taking Khloe to the side and not doing a confrontation in front of everybody. Yeah, it was a little bit slow. Hey, D-Glove. It was a little bit slow to me, but I did enjoy it. I would say 7.75, almost an 8. The show was good. It just, it wasn't like the first episode to me. The first episode, I was like, I am locked in, and I'm still locked in. But I look forward to seeing more and seeing some actual, like, what is it? Even like with Elena and Josh, like, I didn't learn any more about what the breakdown in their marriage was today, this past weekend. What I learned is that he's willing to go to counseling. But I think there's a lot more layers to be peeled back with all of these ladies. And then we'll be able to really, you know, start getting into some good stuff. I think once we kind of get over the introduction and the fact that this is the show and these are the women, this is what they have going on, we can actually start to hear some real conversations. So that is my review of Heart and Hustle. I'm going to give it a 7.75 or a 7.25. Yeah, 7.75. Almost an 8. Definitely, because I like the show, but I think I could have got a little bit more excitement. I would have actually liked to see a little bit more of the girls at the rodeo if that was possible. But of course, that's probably just me, because y'all know I like going to the rodeo. But yeah, it was good. I'm definitely locked in for next week. Next week, I want to see from Labrina. I definitely want to kind of see into that, because she has this very, very elaborate outside, you know, this former NFL husband, this gorgeous ranch, all this stuff. And she seems to be the motivator of other people in the group. So I'd like to get to know her better and kind of see what her home life is like. I also am looking forward to seeing Latoria date, and I'm rooting for her. We are rooting for her. So I'm interested in really those things. Definitely also seeing Elena and Josh work through their disconnect in their marriage and hopefully repair it. I would love to see them repair it because I just believe in love and I believe in marriage. So I always am going to want it to be repaired if possible. And I think with God, all things are possible. So yeah, that's what I think about the episode. Let me know what you guys think. What would you rate the second episode of Heart and Hustle? Do you agree with me with the 7.75? Do you think it was a 8? Do you think it was a 6? What do you think? What do you think? Leave it in the comments. Also, let me know your thoughts on the girls. Let me know if you have empathy for Khloe. Oh, private person said 5.5. Ooh, that's low. That's low. Oof. But hey, it was kind of slow. It was a little bit slow. I guess it was slow. It was slow. But I think it's gonna pick back up. We just got it. We're just kind of like the car's just warming up. We haven't even pulled out yet. The engine's on, the car is warming up, and we're about to pull off. So I give the production a little bit of grace with that. And the first episode was so good. It was rough to follow that up. So looking forward to the third episode, you guys. I will probably be back on Sunday nights with this. Like I said, I just had a very, very busy Sunday, so I didn't get a chance to. I got another 7. You know what? The average is not good. So I said 7.75. You said a 7. They said a 5.5. We are still coming in like right around 7, maybe even a 6.75. Anyway, let me know in the chat, and then meet me back here on Sunday of next week for episode 3. Remember, today, later on tonight, we have King's Court. My review of the 4th or 5th episode, I can't remember which one it is, of King's Court is happening tonight at 10 o'clock. So make sure you're tuned in for that. And yeah, it should be a fun week. We have a great guest. Trust me, ladies. Please, if you have not subscribed, you would want to subscribe because we have an amazing guest for Wednesday, and she has a book titled Black Women Need Love Too. And I know that this chat is going to love the book. We're going to have her answer some questions. We're going to take some Q&A from the chat. It's going to be a good time. So Wednesday, make sure that you're locked and loaded. Make sure you check in with me later on tonight. And make sure before you leave your rating for Heart and Hustle there in the comments. What do you rate the show and why? Okay. That being said, I'm Christal X. I'm going to get out of here. I've got a lot to do on this Monday. But I thank you guys for hanging out with me in the middle of the day. And I look forward to seeing your feedback. Those of you that are watching on the replay, what is your feedback? What would you rate the episode? And remember our question. Our question is calling a woman a BBW, is that a compliment or is it an insult? And if whichever way you believe, let us know why. Okay? All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I have appreciated everyone that has watched this. Please, you guys, tune in next week, next Saturday, for the 3rd episode of Heart and Hustle. And then follow it with me on Sunday. I'll be reviewing and talking about all the stuff that we saw on the show. We will definitely be going through it. So I love you guys for watching. I'm about to get out of here. I'll be back tonight with King's Court and Grace and Gossip. All right. I love you. Stay well. Remember, life is not promised. Love on the people that you need to. And most importantly, starting with yourself. Okay. I'll see you guys later tonight.